Maya sat in her usual spot at the back corner of the cafeteria, right where the vending machines hummed loud enough to drown out most of the noise around her. She had her earbuds in, not because she was listening to anything, but because it gave people a reason not to talk to her. In her lap, a notebook covered in coffee stains held pages and pages of musical notations, little symbols that somehow made more sense to her than the conversations happening all around. 17 years old, and this was her sixth school. Sixth time being the new girl. Sixth time sitting alone at lunch while everyone else had their groups, their inside jokes, their history together. Her father's military career meant moving every couple of years, and Maya had learned early on that making friends wasn't worth the pain of leaving them behind. The cafeteria was buzzing today, louder than usual. Something about a talent show coming up in 3 weeks. Maya caught bits and pieces of conversation as students walked past her table. A group of girls near the windows were already planning their dance routine. Some guys by the lunch line were arguing about who should be in their band. Everyone seemed excited, like this talent show was the biggest thing that would happen all year. Maya kept her head down, her pencil moving across the page. She was working on something new, a melody that had been stuck in her head since last Tuesday. It started soft, almost like a whisper, then built into something bigger. She could hear it perfectly in her mind, every note, every pause, every moment where the music should make you hold your breath. The bell rang, and students started filing out. Maya took her time packing up her notebook, waiting until most people had left. It was easier that way. Less chance of awkward eye contact in the hallways, less chance of someone asking her a question she'd have to answer. Walking home from school, she passed houses where families had lived for years. Gardens that someone had actually cared enough to plant. Mailboxes with family names painted on them like they weren't going anywhere. Maya's family lived in base housing, one of those cookie-cutter homes that all looked exactly the same. Nothing on the walls because why bother hanging pictures when you just have to take them down in a year or two? But there was one thing in their house that mattered. One thing that made every temporary place feel a little bit like home. Her grandmother's piano sat in the living room, dark wood worn smooth from decades of fingers running across its keys. It was the only piece of furniture they moved with them every single time. The only thing Maya's mother insisted on keeping, no matter how much the movers complained about the weight. That piano had belonged to Maya's grandmother, who died when Maya was 7. She barely remembered her, just flashes of memory. The smell of lavender, soft hands guiding her fingers to the right keys, a voice saying, "Music doesn't lie, sweetheart. It tells the truth even when we can't." Maya's mother was in the kitchen when she got home, still in her work uniform from the pharmacy. She looked tired, like she always did after a long shift, but she smiled when Maya walked in. "How was school?" "Fine," Maya said, which was what she always said. It was easier than explaining that school was just something she endured 5 days a week, until she could come home to the piano. Her mother didn't push. She never did. Instead, she just nodded and went back to chopping vegetables for dinner. They had a quiet understanding, the two of them. Don't ask too many questions. Don't expect too many answers. Just keep moving forward. After dinner, Maya did her homework at the kitchen table. Math problems that seemed pointless. An essay about a book she'd barely read. History questions about events that felt less real than the music in her head. She rushed through it all, her mind already on the piano, waiting in the other room. By 9 o'clock, her parents had gone to bed. Her father had an early shift at the base, and her mother needed rest before opening the pharmacy in the morning. The house fell into that particular kind of quiet that only comes late at night, when everyone's asleep and you feel like the only person awake in the world. Maya sat down at the piano, her fingers finding the keys in the darkness. She didn't turn on the light. She didn't need to. She'd played this piano so many times she could find every note with her eyes closed. She started working on the melody from her notebook, the one that had been haunting her all day. Her fingers moved slowly at first, feeling out the notes, testing different combinations. Some sounded wrong. Some sounded close. And then, every once in a while, she'd hit the exact right note and something inside her chest would loosen, just a little bit. This was when Maya felt most like herself. Not the quiet girl in the back of the cafeteria. Not the military kid who never stayed anywhere long enough to matter. Just her and the music, having a conversation that didn't need words. She played for 2 hours that night, losing track of time completely. The melody grew and changed under her fingers, becoming something more than what she'd first imagined. It had sadness in it, sure. All that loneliness, all those goodbyes, all those moments of feeling invisible. But it had something else too. Something stubborn. Something that refused to disappear no matter how many times it got ignored. When she finally stopped playing, her fingers were sore and her eyes were heavy. She looked at the clock and realized it was past 11. She'd have to wake up in 6 hours for school. But as Maya climbed the stairs to her bedroom, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. That tiny spark of purpose, like maybe all this moving around, all this being alone, all these nights at the piano actually added up to something. Like maybe she was building towards something she couldn't quite see yet. She didn't know that in 3 weeks everything would change. She didn't know that her music teacher had been standing outside the living room window listening. She didn't know that the talent show everyone was buzzing about would become the night that divided her life into before and after. All Maya knew was that she had this music inside her, demanding to be written. And for now, in this temporary house, in this temporary town, that was enough. Mrs. Rodriguez caught Maya after class on a Thursday afternoon. The music teacher was one of those people who seemed to notice everything, even the students who tried their hardest to blend into the walls. She had kind eyes and wore colorful scarves that didn't match her practical shoes, and she'd been teaching at the school for almost 20 years. "Maya, can we talk for a minute?" Maya's stomach dropped. Teachers who wanted to talk usually meant trouble, or worse, they wanted to discuss feelings. She nodded slowly, gripping her backpack straps a little tighter. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out a chair and gestured for Maya to sit. "I was walking my dog past your neighborhood last Tuesday night, around 10 o'clock, and I heard someone playing piano. Beautiful piano. Original composition, if I'm not mistaken." Maya's face went hot. Someone had heard her. Someone had been listening. All those nights she thought she was alone, invisible in the darkness, and someone had been standing outside listening to her private conversations with the keys. "That was you, wasn't it?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked gently. There was no point lying. Maya nodded, staring at her hands. "Maya, that was extraordinary. How long have you been composing your own music?" "I don't know. A few years, I guess." "A few years," Mrs. Rodriguez repeated, shaking her head in wonder. "And you've never performed? Never shared your work?" "I play for myself," Maya said quietly. "Just me." Mrs. Rodriguez leaned forward. "I want you to enter the spring talent show. I want you to play one of your original pieces. The one I heard Tuesday night, maybe, or something else you've been working on." Maya felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her chair. Perform? In front of the whole school? In front of all those people who didn't know she existed and probably preferred it that way? "I can't," she said immediately. I don't perform. I just play at home." "Maya, you have real talent. The kind that doesn't come along often, and talent like that deserves to be heard." "Nobody wants to hear me play," Maya said, and she meant it. She wasn't being modest or fishing for compliments. She genuinely believed that her music was just for her, something private that wouldn't translate beyond her grandmother's old piano in the dark living room. But Mrs. Rodriguez wasn't giving up. Over the next week, she kept bringing it up. Little comments after class, encouraging notes on Maya's music theory homework. Finally, she invited Maya to stay after school one day and play something. Anything just for her. Maya played the piece Mrs. Rodriguez had heard through the window. Her fingers shook at first, but then the music took over like it always did, and she forgot anyone was listening. When she finished, she looked up to find her teacher wiping her eyes. "You're entering that talent show," Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. "This isn't a request anymore, Maya. This is me telling you that you have something important to share. And you're going to share it," Maya wanted to argue, but something in her teacher's voice made her pause. Maybe it was the certainty there. Maybe it was the fact that someone finally saw her, really saw her, and thought she was worth listening to. "Okay," Maya heard herself say, "but I go last. If I'm going to fail, I want to fail when people are already leaving." Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. "Deal." The next day, Maya saw her name on the talent show roster posted outside the auditorium. There it was, in black and white. Maya Chen piano performance. Last slot, 8 o'clock. That's when the whispers started. At first, Maya didn't notice. She was too busy panicking internally, too focused on the fact that she'd somehow agreed to do the most terrifying thing she could imagine. But by the end of the week, the whispers were impossible to ignore. Who's Maya Chen? That weird quiet girl who sits alone? She's playing piano? Since when? Probably some boring classical piece nobody cares about. In the cafeteria, a group of girls were looking at the roster on someone's phone. One of them, Brianna Hayes, was the kind of girl who seemed to glow with confidence. She had almost 10,000 followers on social media, and everything she did seemed to turn into content. She looked at Maya's name and laughed. The girl from the corner? She's performing? That's random. Her friends laughed too, and Maya felt herself shrinking in her seat. She pulled her hood up and tried to disappear into her jacket. But Brianna wasn't done. That afternoon, a TikTok appeared on the school's social media feed. It was Brianna and her friends doing a mock dramatic performance, pretending to play piano with exaggerated serious faces. The caption read, "When nobodies think they're somebodies. Talent show gonna be interesting." The video got 200 likes in an hour. Comments poured in. Most of them were laughing at the idea of unknowns trying to compete with established performers like Brianna's dance crew. Maya saw it during her last class of the day. Her hands started shaking so badly she had to put her phone away. She spent the rest of the period staring at the clock, counting down the minutes until she could go home and hide. That night, she almost texted Mrs. Rodriguez to drop out. Her thumb hovered over the send button for 10 full minutes. But something stopped her. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was just the memory of her grandmother's voice saying music tells the truth even when we can't. The weeks leading up to the talent show were torture. Every day, Maya heard whispers in the hallways. She saw people looking at her, pointing, laughing behind their hands. More TikToks appeared, each one mocking the idea of a nobody like her thinking she could perform. Brianna's crew posted daily updates about their dance routine, showing off their matching costumes and professional choreography. Other acts posted teaser videos. The talent show had become the biggest event of the spring semester, and Maya had become its unofficial joke. She practiced every night until her fingers hurt. The melody she'd been working on had grown into something complete now, a full piece that ran almost 6 minutes. She called it Voices Carry in her head, though she hadn't told anyone the title. 3 days before the show, Maya threw up before breakfast. Her mother found her in the bathroom, pale and shaking. "You don't have to do this," her mother said gently. "Nobody's forcing you," but that wasn't quite true. Maya was forcing herself. Because somewhere underneath all the fear and anxiety and shame, there was something else, a tiny voice that said maybe, just maybe, her music deserved to exist outside her living room. Maybe being invisible was safe, but it was also a kind of lie. "I have to," Maya whispered. "I don't know why, but I have to." Her mother hugged her tight and didn't say anything else. Sometimes there are no words that help. Sometimes you just have to walk through the fire and see what's on the other side. The night before the talent show, Maya sat at her grandmother's piano and played Voices Carry one more time. Her hands didn't shake. The notes came out clear and true. And for just a moment, she let herself imagine that maybe this wouldn't be a disaster. Maybe this would be something else entirely. She went to bed with her stomach in knots, knowing that tomorrow night everything would change. One way or another, after tomorrow, she couldn't go back to being invisible. The question was whether she was ready to be seen. The auditorium smelled like old wood and nervous sweat. Maya stood backstage, peeking through the heavy curtain at the seats filling up with students, parents, teachers, and people from the community. The talent show had become a bigger deal than anyone expected. Every seat was taken and people were standing along the back wall. Her hands were ice cold. She rubbed them together, trying to get the blood flowing, trying to remember what it felt like to play without fear. But her mind kept going blank, like someone had erased everything she'd practiced over the past 3 weeks. The show started at 6:30. Maya was scheduled for 8 o'clock, the very last performance, which meant she had to stand backstage for an hour and a half, watching everyone else perform, feeling her anxiety grow with each passing minute. The first act was a comedy duo who told jokes about high school life. People laughed. They were good. Maya's stomach twisted tighter. Then came a singer doing a pop cover. Her voice was strong and confident. The crowd cheered. Maya felt herself getting smaller. A magic act. A spoken word poetry performance. A guy playing guitar and singing an original song that was actually pretty amazing. Each act seemed more polished than the last. Each performer looked like they belonged up there, like the stage was made for them. Maya caught glimpses of the audience through the curtain gap. She saw students recording on their phones. She saw parents smiling proudly. She saw teachers nodding along to the music. and she saw Brianna, sitting in the third row with her crew, all of them dressed perfectly, waiting for their turn to perform. Brianna's dance routine was scheduled for 7:45. Right before Maya, of course it was. The two biggest acts of the night, back to back. Except one was actually big, and the other was just a scared girl who'd made a terrible mistake. At 7:30, Maya felt her chest getting tight. She couldn't breathe properly. The backstage area was too small, too hot, too crowded with performers and stage crew. She pushed through a side door and found herself in an empty hallway, leaning against the cool wall, trying to remember how lungs were supposed to work. Mrs. Rodriguez found her there 5 minutes later. "Maya, sweetheart, are you okay?" Maya shook her head. She couldn't speak. If she opened her mouth, she might cry or scream or both. "Listen to me," Mrs. Rodriguez said, kneeling down so they were eye level. "You don't have to do this. If you want to walk away right now, that's fine. Nobody will judge you." But that wasn't true, and they both knew it. Everyone would judge her. The girl who chickened out. The nobody who thought she was somebody. The joke who became an even bigger joke. "I can't do it," Maya whispered. "I can't go out there." "Then don't," Mrs. Rodriguez said simply. "Go home, get some sleep. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." For a moment, Maya almost took the out. Almost ran through that hallway, out the front doors, all the way home to her grandmother's piano, where everything made sense. But then she heard the music from inside the auditorium. Another performer finishing their act. Another round of applause. And she thought about all those nights playing alone in the dark. All those melodies that lived inside her with nowhere to go. All those feelings she couldn't put into words but could somehow put into notes. "What if I fail?" Maya asked. "Then you fail," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "But at least you'll fail doing something real. Something true. That's more than most people ever do." They walked back to the backstage area together. Maya's legs felt like water, but they kept moving. One step, then another, then another. At 7:45 exactly, Brianna's crew took the stage. 8 dancers in matching outfits, moving in perfect synchronization to a popular song everyone knew. The choreography was tight, professional, clearly the result of weeks of practice. The audience went wild. People were on their feet before the routine even finished. The applause when they took their final pose was deafening. Maya watched from the wings and her heart sank completely. How could she follow that? How could anyone follow that? Brianna and her crew came off stage, high-fiving each other, glowing with success. As they passed Maya, Brianna caught her eye. For just a second, something flickered across her face. Not quite sympathy, but not cruelty either. Just acknowledgement, one performer to another. Then she was gone, swept up in the congratulations of her friends. The stage manager, a senior named Kevin, touched Maya's shoulder. "You're up." 2 minutes, Maya nodded, but she couldn't feel her face. Couldn't feel anything except the crushing weight of what she was about to do. The MC, a teacher with too much enthusiasm, walked onto the stage. What an incredible performance. Let's hear it one more time for Brianna and her dance crew. More applause. More cheering. Maya could hear the energy in that auditorium. All of it directed at the act that just finished. Nobody was thinking about what came next. Nobody cared about the last name on the roster. "And now," the MC continued, "for our final performance of the evening, playing an original composition on piano, please welcome Maya Chen." The applause was polite. Scattered. The kind of noise people make because they're supposed to, not because they want to. Maya could hear the whispers starting already, even from backstage. Could hear the shuffling as people checked their phones ready to be bored. She walked onto the stage on legs that didn't feel like her own. The lights were so bright she couldn't see the audience anymore, just a blur of shapes and darkness. Someone had wheeled out the school's old grand piano and positioned it at center stage. It looked huge under the lights. Intimidating. Maya sat down on the bench. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to press them flat against her thighs for a moment. She could hear the whispers growing louder. Could feel hundreds of eyes on her. Most of them already dismissing her, already composing their jokes and TikTok captions. She looked at the keys. 88 of them, black and white, waiting. They looked the same as the keys on her grandmother's piano. They were just keys. Just wood and hammers and strings. Nothing scary about keys, but the silence behind her was terrifying. That expectant, impatient silence of an audience that wanted to go home. An audience that had already seen the best performance of the night and was now stuck watching the consolation prize. Maya closed her eyes. She thought about her grandmother, who she barely remembered. She thought about all those late nights when it was just her and the music. She thought about Mrs. Rodriguez saying that music tells the truth even when we can't. And she thought about the melody that had been living inside her for months now. Voices Carry. The piece she'd written about feeling invisible, about being unheard, about moving through the world like a ghost. She took a breath. Another. One more. Then she placed her fingers on the keys. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. She sat there frozen while the whispers grew louder. Someone coughed. Someone laughed. She heard a phone notification go off somewhere in the audience. This was it. This was the moment she could still run, still save herself from complete humiliation. But instead, Maya pressed down on the first key, and everything changed. The first note hung in the air like a question nobody knew how to answer. Maya pressed the second key, then the third. The melody started soft, almost too quiet to hear over the rustling and whispering in the auditorium. She could still feel the doubt radiating from the audience, could still sense people checking their watches, wondering how long they'd have to sit through this. But Maya kept playing. Her fingers found the familiar pattern she'd practiced 1,000 times in her living room. The opening section of Voices Carry was meant to sound uncertain, like someone trying to speak but not sure if anyone's listening. That's exactly what it felt like now. 30 seconds in, something shifted. Maya stopped hearing the whispers. Or maybe they were still there, but the music had grown loud enough to cover them. Her hands moved across the keys with more confidence now, building the melody into something stronger. The notes came faster, more insistent. In the third row, Brianna stopped scrolling through her phone. She looked up at the stage, her thumb frozen mid-swipe. One of her friends nudged her and whispered something, but Brianna didn't respond. She was listening. The melody changed again. Maya's left hand came in with a bass line that sounded like a heartbeat, steady and constant underneath the wandering right-hand melody. This was the part she'd written after her last move, after saying goodbye to the only friend she'd managed to make at her previous school. The music carried all that sadness, all that tiredness of always being new, always starting over. A minute into the performance, the whispers had stopped completely. Maya didn't notice because her eyes were closed now, but the change was visible across the auditorium. Students who'd been slouching sat up straighter. Parents who'd been checking their phones lowered them. The scattered coughs and shuffling feet went silent. The music built to a crescendo, Maya's hands moving faster, pressing harder. This was the angry section, the part she'd written at 2 a.m. after overhearing some girls at school talking about her like she wasn't even human. Like being quiet meant she had no feelings. The notes crashed against each other, discordant and raw. All that frustration she never let show on her face pouring out through her fingertips. In the back row, a mother reached for her husband's hand without taking her eyes off the stage. 3 rows over, a freshman boy who'd been planning to leave early found himself leaning forward in his seat. Even the teachers lining the walls had stopped their quiet conversations. Then the music softened again. Maya's right hand lifted off the keys for a moment, leaving just the left hand playing a simple repeating pattern. When the right hand came back, it was different, gentler. This was the part she'd written last just 2 weeks ago. The part that surprised her when it came out because it wasn't about loneliness or anger anymore. It was about finding something beautiful in all the moving, all the change. About how her grandmother's piano had been there through everything, constant and true. 4 minutes in, someone in the audience was crying. Then someone else, then more. But nobody was embarrassed about it. The tears just came, quiet and honest, because Maya's music was unlocking something in people they didn't know they'd been holding back. Brianna uncrossed her arms. She didn't even realize she'd had them crossed until they dropped to her sides. Her perfectly applied makeup was smudged now, black lines running down her cheeks, but she didn't care. For the first time in months, maybe years, she wasn't thinking about her image or her followers or her content. She was just feeling something real. The music shifted one more time. This was the final movement, the part Maya had struggled with the most. How do you end a piece about feeling unheard? She'd tried different endings, loud and triumphant, quiet and resigned. Nothing felt right until she realized the ending wasn't about being heard by others. It was about hearing herself, trusting her own voice. So the final section was both powerful and quiet at the same time. The notes were simple, almost childlike, but they were played with absolute certainty. No hesitation, no apology, just truth. This was the sound of someone deciding that being invisible was a choice and she was choosing something different. Maya's hands moved slower now, each note given space to breathe. The melody from the beginning came back but transformed. What started as a question was now an answer. What started uncertain was now sure. She played the final chord and let it ring out, her foot on the sustain pedal letting the sound fill every corner of the auditorium. The note hung in the air for what felt like forever. Then her foot lifted and the sound faded into silence. Complete, absolute silence. Maya opened her eyes. She was breathing hard like she'd just run a mile. Her hands were still on the keys and for a moment she couldn't remember where she was. The stage lights were too bright. She blinked, trying to adjust, trying to come back to reality. The silence held. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Maya's heart dropped. They hated it. They sat through it out of politeness and now nobody knew how to react. She'd bared her soul and they'd all just watched awkwardly, waiting for it to be over. She started to stand up, ready to run off stage and never come back. Then someone started clapping. It was Mrs. Rodriguez, standing in the wings with tears streaming down her face, clapping like her life depended on it. Then the principal joined in. Then a parent in the back row. Then suddenly, like a dam breaking, the entire auditorium exploded into applause. But it wasn't just applause. People were standing up, shooting to their feet, like they couldn't sit anymore, like they had to physically express what they'd just experienced. The sound was overwhelming, crashing over Maya in waves. She stood there, frozen, not understanding what was happening. The applause got louder. Students were shouting. A group of sophomores near the front were on their feet, clapping over their heads. Parents were wiping their eyes. Teachers were looking at each other with the kind of amazement usually reserved for miracles. Brianna was standing too, her hands pressed together so hard they'd gone white. She was crying openly now, not caring who saw, not caring about the mascara running down her face. The girl next to her tried to say something, but Brianna just shook her head, unable to speak. The standing ovation went on and on. Maya just stood there next to the piano, her hands at her sides, completely overwhelmed. She'd expected polite applause at best, mockery at worst. This was something else entirely. Something she had no reference for. Mrs. Rodriguez rushed onto the stage and pulled Maya into a hug. The applause somehow got even louder. Students were whistling now, cheering, some of them chanting Maya's name like she was a celebrity. The MC tried to take the microphone to close out the show, but nobody could hear him over the noise. 5 minutes passed and people were still clapping. Parents kept standing. Students kept cheering. The stage crew came out to start breaking down equipment and had to stop because nobody was leaving. They just kept applauding, kept celebrating, kept trying to show this quiet girl from the back of the cafeteria that they'd heard her, really heard her. Maya finally looked out at the audience, and for the first time she could see their faces clearly. And what she saw in those faces changed something fundamental inside her. She saw recognition. She saw connection. She saw people looking at her not with pity or judgment, but with understanding, like her music had given them permission to feel things they'd been hiding too. The whispers that had followed her for weeks were gone. In their place was something Maya had never experienced before. She was seen. She was heard. And instead of being terrifying, it felt like coming home. But the real victory wasn't the applause, though that was nice. The real victory was the moment about 3 minutes into her performance, when Maya realized she'd stopped playing for them and started playing for herself again. When she forgot about the audience and the fear and the judgment and just let the music be what it needed to be. That was the moment everything changed. Not when they started clapping, but when she stopped needing them to. The hallway outside the auditorium was packed with people waiting to talk to Maya. Students she'd never spoken to. Parents she didn't know. Teachers who'd passed her in the halls 100 times without a second glance. They all wanted to tell her something. Share something. Connect somehow. A girl from her math class was crying as she approached. That part in the middle, where everything got quiet and then came back different. That's exactly how I felt when my parents got divorced. Like everything stopped and then had to start over. How did you know? Maya didn't know what to say. She hadn't been thinking about divorce when she wrote that section. She'd been thinking about moving from Colorado to North Carolina. But somehow the feeling was the same. Loss is loss. Change is change. The music understood that even if she couldn't explain it. An older man, someone's grandfather probably, shook her hand with both of his. I haven't felt something like that in 40 years. You've got a gift, young lady. A real gift. Mrs. Rodriguez stayed close, running interference when Maya looked too overwhelmed, which was often. But even her teacher seemed stunned by the response. This wasn't just people being nice. This was something deeper. Something that didn't happen every day. Finally, after almost an hour of conversations and thank yous and tears, Maya saw Brianna approaching. Her stomach tightened instinctively. This was the girl who'd made those TikToks. The girl who'd turned Maya into a joke. The girl whose perfect performance Maya had somehow followed. But when Brianna reached her, there was no smirk. No attitude. Her makeup was still smudged, her eyes red from crying. She looked smaller somehow, more human than the confident influencer Maya had watched from across the cafeteria. "Can we talk?" Brianna asked quietly. "Just for a minute?" Maya nodded and they stepped away from the crowd, finding a quieter corner near the trophy cases. "I need to apologize," Brianna said, the words rushing out. "Those videos I made, the things I said, I was awful. I was cruel. And I'm sorry." Maya started to say it was fine, the automatic response. But Brianna kept talking. "I spent months planning that dance routine, months, getting the choreography perfect, practicing every day, making sure everything looked right. And it was good. I know it was good. But your music," she paused, wiping her eyes. "Your music made me feel something. My dance made people clap. Your music made them cry, made me cry. And I realized I've been so focused on being impressive that I forgot about being real." "Your dance was amazing," Maya said, and she meant it. "Everyone loved it. Yeah, they loved it. But they'll forget it by Monday. What you did tonight, nobody's going to forget that." Brianna pulled out her phone. "I'm deleting those TikToks. All of them. And I'm going to post an apology. A real one. What I did was wrong." "You don't have to do that," Maya said. "Yes, I do. Not for you. Well, partly for you, but also for me. Because I don't want to be the kind of person who tears people down for trying." Brianna looked at her phone, then back at Maya. "Can I ask you something? How did you do it? How did you get up there knowing everyone was judging you and just not care?" Maya thought about that. "I did care. I was terrified. But I cared more about the music than I cared about what people thought of me. That's all?" Brianna nodded slowly, like Maya had just explained something profound. Maybe she had. They talked for a few more minutes, then Brianna had to leave. Before she went, she gave Maya a hug. Not the fake kind people do for photos. A real one. Then she was gone, and Maya was alone in the hallway. The crowd had mostly dispersed. A few stage crew members were cleaning up inside the auditorium. Maya could see her parents waiting by the exit, giving her space but ready when she needed them. She walked back into the empty auditorium. The piano was still on stage, waiting to be rolled back to the music room. Maya sat down at it one more time. The keys felt familiar under her fingers, like old friends. She played a few notes, nothing in particular, just feeling the connection between what she felt inside and what came out in sound. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared from somewhere in the wings. She'd been crying earlier, but now she just looked proud, tired and proud. "You changed a lot of minds tonight," she said. "I didn't mean to change anything. I just played." "That's exactly why you change things. You weren't trying to prove anything or impress anyone. You were just honest. That's rare, Maya, especially at your age." Maya played another chord. "I don't think I'm going to be invisible anymore." "No," Mrs. Rodriguez agreed. "Probably not." "Is that scary?" "Terrifying," Maya admitted. "But also kind of okay. Because they're not seeing some version of me I'm pretending to be. They're seeing the actual me. The music part. The real part. That's the part worth seeing," her teacher said. The next few weeks were strange in ways Maya couldn't have predicted. Students approached her in hallways, but not to mock her. They wanted to talk about music, about feelings, about their own creative things they were too scared to share. Her lunch table was no longer empty. People asked if they could sit with her, and Maya, still uncomfortable with attention but getting better at it, said yes. The local news ran a story about the talent show. The video of Maya's performance that someone had recorded on their phone went viral online. Not TikTok viral, but enough that strangers from other towns were commenting about how it made them feel. Maya's mom showed her some of the comments one morning, and they were all saying the same thing in different ways. Your music told the truth. Brianna kept her word. She deleted the mocking videos and posted a genuine apology. She lost some followers over it, people who thought she was being too dramatic or too soft, but she gained something else. She and Maya weren't exactly friends, but there was respect there, understanding. They'd both learned something that night about the difference between being seen and being known. A month after the talent show, a music professor from the university 2 hours away reached out to Mrs. Rodriguez. She'd seen the video online and wanted to know if Maya had ever considered studying composition seriously. There were scholarships, opportunities, programs for young composers. Maya sat in Mrs. Rodriguez's classroom after school, looking at the information packets the professor had sent. All her life she'd thought of her music as something private, something just for her. The idea of making it her future felt impossible and exciting and terrifying all at once. "What do you think I should do?" she asked her teacher. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. "I think you should keep doing exactly what you did on that stage. Stop worrying about whether you're good enough and just let the music be what it needs to be. Everything else will follow." That night, Maya sat at her grandmother's piano like she'd done 1,000 nights before. But this time felt different. She wasn't playing to escape or hide or be alone. She was playing because she had things to say, and music was how she knew to say them. Her fingers found the keys, and a new melody started forming, something about change and courage and the strange gift of being truly heard. She didn't know where the piece would go yet, didn't know if anyone else would ever hear it. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was that she was playing. And she wasn't quiet because she had nothing to say. She was quiet because she was learning to choose her words carefully. And when she finally spoke, when she let her music carry her voice out into the world, people listened. Not because she was loud or impressive or trying to be something she wasn't, but because she was real. And real, it turned out, was the rarest and most powerful thing of all. Maya played into the night, creating something new from everything she'd learned. The melody flowed through her fingers like water, like breath, like truth. And somewhere in the music, between the notes and the silence, she found exactly what she'd been looking for all along. Not a way to be heard, a reason to speak, and that made all the difference.